Okay, welcome everyone to our second episode of the Merseyside Health Podcast. And I am delighted today to be joined by um, Olympic coach, Master Coach, Mr. Paul Greaves, and he is up in the Highlands of Scotland. So, Paul, would you mind introducing yourself in a bit more detail and let's hear about you?
Hi, yes, I'm Paul Greaves. I coached Bryony Page to two Olympic Games, to Rio and Tokyo. She won a silver in Rio and a bronze in Tokyo. I've been coaching pretty much most of my life. I started as an assistant coach when I was 14 and then set my own trampoline club up at the age of 18. And we were one of the most successful programs, both from a community sort of perspective in terms of we saw so many people coming through our doors every week that were just there to do it for fun and recreation and to keep like fit and healthy. And then we had the competitive side where people were competing all over the country and ultimately internationally towards the Olympic Games. So yeah, I've been coaching for quite a long time now.
Yeah, we met, didn't we, in Sheffield? So we were both at Sheffield Hallam University, and um, we can't do this podcast without mentioning fellow Merseyside Health physio Tom Drinkwater, because the three of us for about a year were actually housemates, weren't we?
We were
So that's
housemates.
my claim to fame is I once lived with the famous Olympic coach Paul Greaves.
We certainly did. There was very happy memories of Sheffield Hallam. So yeah, it was when we first met, and actually at that point, my club was really starting to sort of go in a different direction. Like before that, it was predominantly sort of regional level, and we weren't really that high level. And then sort of around the time, maybe it's your influence, Ben, like your positive influence, you know,
I think,
catapulted us to success.
yeah, I think the Sheffield Abbey Flyers have often cited me as the turning point in the club's history. That that
Absolutely.
one se- that one session that I turned up to once, and that was the moment that it all took off, really, wasn't it? So you were let's be honest, you were actually interested in my good friend James Thornton, who was a talented prospect, and
On
that was
honestly,
you spotted his potential, didn't you? And I just tagged along, really.
if I'd have been able to work with James when he was younger, Jim the gymnast as we know him, yeah, I just he had such potential, but obviously he was that little bit older and wasn't really interested in trampoline. He was more interested in gymnastics. But yeah, he could have been really good.
Yeah, you got him into the Sheffield Hallam trampolining team and going off to Bucks competitions, didn't you? And I remember he enjoyed it, but I think you got him just that little bit too late, and he was already signing out of gymnastics mentally, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. But again, he had a good time sort of competing for Hallam and stuff, and that was always good fun. And we were up and down the country together, going to, British University competitions and stuff. So yeah, it was good. He did well in a different way.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So, okay, well, I also remember you were on the course, the coaching course, weren't you, at Hallam? So I'm interested on this podcast in speaking to people about health related issues, but also fitness and performance related issues. So coaching philosophy, then, that is a term that gets bandied around. What is coaching philosophy, and what's yours?
This is something that you hear all the time, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm an athlete-centered coach." And sometimes I listen to it and I'm thinking, "Are you really?" Because like I'll watch them coach and I'm thinking, "You're definitely more coach-centered than athlete-centered." But coaching philosophy is basically it's a mixture of like your values, your beliefs, and your everyday behaviors. So, for example, if you're saying that you're going to be a positive coach, then you're going up and you're miserable all the time. That's not really living by your philosophy. So some of my sort of key bits to my philosophy are around positivity and that positive approach. So one of the things that I always say is positive is better than being negative. So even if you don't have a great experience at a competition or an event or something like that, I've always tried to flip that around and say, don't use the word failure as a negative. Like change the word failure to learning, and then that completely changes like what your experience is. So if you've not done well in a competition or not done well at training or something like that, what have you learned? You know, what did you learn from that? So I suppose my philosophy is about continual learning with like a positive approach. It wasn't always that, and it's changed quite a lot. I remember writing down my philosophy as a young coach. I'm going to say young coach, I'm like 19, 20, and it was to create a conveyor belt of success of top level trampolinists. And even that is just so mechanical and like not personal. And that was my ambition, to be successful. And I wanted, to get people to top level. And I did that, but I realized quite quickly that not with that philosophy, it wasn't going to happen. So yeah, I became much more thoughtful actually after undertaking my degree in sport coaching at Sheffield Hallam. And now I've run the degree program up at University of Stirling for sport development and coaching, and I'm bringing my philosophy to that now as well. So really trying to help other people realize, who they are, what they value, what they believe in, and how they behave and conduct themselves is important.
People's values and standards, isn't it? Really, at its heart, and the term conveyor belt. I've heard that quite a few times in different sports, and it's that can sometimes be, and I appreciate that's what you were saying when you were a younger coach. So I'm sure that's changed now. But that seems to be where the wheels come off when the focus is on this production line of talent, and the people that are on that production line become commoditized almost. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think just being really honest, it's really difficult because you're known for your gymnast as a coach. Pretty much, you're known for your athletes. So, for example, you don't know the coaches. If I ask you, who is okay, I'm going to put you on the spot now. So, who is Mo Farah's coach?
Well, he was at one point in his career, he was at the Oregon Project, wasn't he? So we know about. I can't remember the name of that coach.
So I'll stop you there. You can't remember the name of him. So, but you can remember the name of Mo Farah.
I can remember Mo Farah, definitely.
And could you tell me? I'm just trying to think of another famous athlete. Let me have a think. Anyway, you've made my point clear. The coaches aren't really sort of remembered. Very few are, unless you're in sort of like a major sport like football or something like that, where the coaches are quite sort of predominant in the media. You're not really known for that, so it puts a pressure on you to remain relevant, to have like continual athletes. And realistically, unless you're in a setup where you've got a big coaching team and a staff and a system that's got a sort of complete sort of stream of people coming through the door, it's really difficult. Because certainly my experience of elite coaching is you're in the gym 5-6 days a week, and you've got to work with that group and bring them through. And whilst you're working with them, you can't really work with others. So you're reliant on other people to keep that sort of success going. And I think it's only really now that I'm really comfortable with my own knowledge, my own skill set, and where I am with my coaching, that I don't need that anymore. And it's one of the things where probably the reason why I've moved to Royal Scotland is because I'm really content with what I've done with coaching and how it's worked out, and I don't need that feeling of, oh, I'm still successful. Like it's changed, but it is a pressure on coaches because if your if your athlete finishes or retires, you've got to start again, and that's a long journey.
Yeah. So have you always got, or do you think coaches have always got one eye on their star performer, who is their main source of profile, perhaps, and then they've always got their eye maybe on who is maybe this person's replacement? Who am I going to start working with next?
I
and
think,
then that's the risk, you take your eye off your star performer, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And I've seen many sort of programs from varying different sports where they've had like real success and they've peaked, and then they disappear for a while and then they come back. There's not that many that can keep and maintain that. There are some that are successful at doing that, and that's around building your coaching base and having other coaches that share similar philosophies and work ethics and things like that. But also you're reliant upon people walking through your door in our country. It's not we don't have a culture or a system such as like China, where they have big sporting schools and things like that. People generally start off sports for fun and enjoyment, or because your family members have got an interest in that and you happen to go along with them, or they encourage you to do it, rather than being sort of picked out from a trial and put into a sporting school from the age of 5. It doesn't, and I wouldn't want that either. So you are reliant upon the person or the people walking through your door. But I do think there's a book that I read, well, coincidentally it's called Bounce, by Merseyside, and it was around the myth of talent. And whilst I agree with some of it, I also disagree with other parts of it. But pretty much if you create the right environment and you create the right sort of opportunities for people, you generally will find people that can make it to top level, provided you've got the support network in place. But the other thing to add to that is that whilst the very few make it to the top level, the masses that can really benefit from that in terms of participation and recreation and fun, that was equally as important to me growing and developing a club. So yeah, I sort of had two different philosophies really with the club that I ran.
And are you still involved with the Abbey Flyers, or have you started a new club, or where are you up to with club participation?
So Sheffield's now got a purpose-built Olympic Performance Centre. So we've got like Olympic standard trampolines. It's it's got a gymnastics equipment and things like that. And literally you can walk in the door, do your training and leave. You don't have to pack all the equipment away or anything like that. So it's a phenomenal centre. So we had a rebranding and it's called Sheffield Performance Trampoline Gymnastics Club. And we've got thousands of kids, and not just kids, actually adults as well, that are benefiting from that facility. I am still involved in that in terms of I'm overseeing the program from a distance, and I check in with the coaches all the time. And it was my baby, really. I bid for all of the funding to get that place built and designed it and everything. And I remember when we opened the doors for the first time, it was just like, I can't believe I've managed to pull this together.
Yeah.
I still can't believe it now. Like, I remember going to the city council when I was like 21 or 22 and saying, we need a purpose-built facility in Sheffield, and they just laughed at me. And they wouldn't follow up with like calls or emails. They just ignored me. So I grew the program with my other coaches and the co-founder Joanne Crowther, and we grew it and grew it and grew it until they couldn't ignore us anymore. So yeah,
I think it's great to hear that, because some people might be listening to this and thinking they've got a project that they want to get off the ground. But I remember coming to your original club that time, and it was sort of a leisure centre, a couple of trampolines, wasn't it? And it was just sort of I suppose a nice clean facility, but it wasn't anything too special. And that vision, some people just think, well, this new performance centre has just always been there, but at some point someone has to have that vision and start to make those calls, and gradually, slowly but surely, it snowballs, and there we go. We've got a performance centre in Sheffield. How great is that?
Yeah, I was pushing for it from day one, and that's what we always wanted. But yeah, I think it was 2012 when it became sort of more of a reality that this was possibly going to happen. And then I had to make some big decisions over how we were going to continue in the future. And it was difficult to manage the performance side of things and sort of, getting this building off the ground and getting this facility, because for me, it wasn't really about me. It was around creating a place where it was easier to just turn up, enjoy, have fun, or get to the Olympics or get to like world level or something like that without all the stress and hassle of having to put up 8 to 12 trampolines every session, put them away every session, carry the mats into a shipping container in the car park when it was pouring down with rain. And I just wanted it to be easier, that, you know, people could actually sort of just join in our sport without having to go through all of that, because it's like if you're a swimmer, you go to a swimming pool, you swim. Like, you know, you don't have to go and fill the pool with water. So, and I was just like, I just don't want to fill the pool with water anymore. I want it to be, you know, people just turn up, and now we've got that in Sheffield, and you know, we can talk about the Olympics and successful athletes, but that for me is as much of a success as anything that I've ever done. And seeing the kids now, like I walk into that centre when I'm back in Sheffield, and the people using that space, nobody has a clue who I am or what I did or anything, and I don't care. It's not about that. It's just really makes me happy to see people using that facility and that space. And you know, we've got some good kids coming through now. The next generation started, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it's an overused term, but it really is a legacy, isn't it? That's a legacy project for you. But let's talk about the Olympics then. So you did 2 Olympic cycles. Is that correct? 2 Olympic cycles. You did Rio and Tokyo with Bryony.
Yeah, I did 4 Olympic cycles. But I was involved in 4 Olympic cycles. So I was involved in. I didn't have athletes competing at Beijing, but we were part of the world class program for Beijing. So I started being part of the world class program. I think it was 2006 or 7. And obviously some of that program were going, you know, we're pushing for the Olympic Games, and so we were on the peripheral at that point. And so going through that experience of Beijing, knowing what performance was and what we needed to do in terms of closing the gap, you know, that the Rio journey and the Tokyo journey actually started much before that. So it started probably, you know, 8 years before that, in terms of thinking, right, this is where we are and this is where the top people in the world are. How are we going to close that gap without chasing, you know, without because if you chase, you end up tripping up. So it was like, what can we do and what do we need to do? And then obviously, you know, some athletes that I had progressed really well. I had a good group of athletes in Sheffield that all supported one another. And you know, Bryony sort of joined our program when she sort of moved. She was looking to move to university, and she went to the University of Sheffield to study biology. And our program had some really good athletes at the time, and you know, she came along and fitted in perfectly and just skyrocketed from that point. You know, she found her environment that she felt comfortable to progress and develop and grow. And then obviously sort of like several years later, she competed in Rio and got a silver medal. So yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Fantastic. And so Rio was your first medaling position, and then you went on. And then, so how did you move then from Rio on to Tokyo? What was the difference between kind of after you'd won that medal? How did you have to shift your approach to coaching after that?
So it was really difficult, and having that ultimate high of an athlete winning a medal, and then also there was a lot of media attention. So because we were in Rio, there was a big time difference here in the UK, and we weren't a priority sport in Rio, so we didn't have the prime time sort of TV slots. We were just sort of like, you know, at the end of the day basically. But that meant that we were prime time here in the UK. So anyway, after she won the medal, I got told that I wouldn't get to see her because she was taken into anti-doping testing. So she was taken for drugs testing, as all the athletes do. And so, you know, they can be gone for hours. So I was like, right, out to celebrate. So I went out, had several drinks and things like that. And then I got the call from the media guy from British Gymnastics, and he's like, they want you on the Claire Baldwin interview. And I'm like, no, like, no,
Baldy
no, no,
wants
no.
you.
So I was like, oh no. And I was quite tipsy at that point. So I was just like, right, get some water, get back into the arena. And then we did the Claire Baldwin interview. It was incredible, loads of media coverage. And then I came back to the UK. I did like a radio tour around Sheffield. I was on all these radio programs and TV and stuff, and it was just like unbelievable. And then it just stopped,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, okay. And you sort of, it's weird. I can't. It was this massive come down afterwards, which was quite difficult. And even I remember going back into work. I was lecturing at that point to Sheffield Hallam, and we went to a work meeting, and the head of sport at the time, like I'd only got back like 3 or 4 days. I've been back in the country from Rio, and we start this meeting, and the head of sport says, "And oh, we've got a few congratulations to start with," and I'm at the back of the room thinking, "Oh, yeah, no, oh, yeah, thank you, or whatever," and he didn't even mention it. He never mentioned it. And he was congratulating some people on their doctorate. They'd passed their PhDs. Somebody had a baby, and he was like congratulating them, and he didn't even mention it. And after that meeting, I was like, oh, like back to reality, harsh, But
I feel a bit bad now because I'm not sure if I even bothered to text you well done, because I just obviously saw it all on the TV. I was like, oh yeah, that's great. Paul's doing well. And I just assumed that you'd be absolutely inundated. I can't remember if I texted you congratulations or not. I probably did.
no, you did. I do remember you did, and it was weird because the morning after she'd won the medal, because it was in Rio, I was out of Wi-Fi and things like that, and then we went and did the whole media tour, so I'd not been able to really connect to my phone. And then I got back at something like 4 a.m. in the morning to the apartment in Rio, because everything was done later there, and just went straight to bed. And I woke up the next morning and I'd got a radio interview at 7 a.m. So I'd only had a few hours sleep. And I picked my phone up and I was just like, oh my God, like it, I mean, it was unbelievable. So like my Facebook Messenger, there was over 1,000, it's like 1,100 and something chats, like what people messages sent. I went onto my emails, I couldn't get through. It was just unbelievable. Text messages. I think in the end it was something over 3,000, and if I tell you that was a small percentage compared to what Bryony got, it was just unbelievable. But yeah, there was a massive come down afterwards, and I had a bit of time away from coaching. Bryony had got an ankle operation sort of scheduled in, which was planned as part of the process after Rio, because she was having some quite a lot of issues with her ankle and she had to keep getting it injected. So there was sort of like a lot of pain management around that going into the games, and so we wanted to get it sorted finally. And so yeah, she had a bit of time out from the ankle injury, and then I had a bit of time out as well, just to sort of realign. And where do you go after that? Like, what do you do? That's your dream goal just achieved. And I was what was I, 33 at the time? 33. Yeah, it was about 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I was
You kidding?
no, I think I was 34. And I was just thinking, right, I've got this building that's been built in 2016 in Sheffield. I've coached an athlete to win an Olympic medal. What do I do now? And I sort of had a moment where I was thinking, I've lost my purpose. Like, I've lost I need to reset the goals. Bryony came back in and was very clear that she wanted to continue to compete for another games to Tokyo. And that was quite difficult because she couldn't jump, because obviously she had an ankle operated on. And obviously she was having a come down as well from that massive high, and you can't jump on the trampoline, which is what you love doing. So that was difficult to manage.
So let's talk about the injury a little bit then, if that's okay. So she knew, you guys knew that was an issue in the lead up to the games in Rio. So you were managing that with the medical team, EIS team.
So we'd had several scans and things like that, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but she had to have basically every time she landed on her foot, it was like an intense nipping feeling. So it's quite painful. And there was, what they found was there was quite a lot of scar tissue in there and things like that. So they had to, I think, and I might not be 100% right because it's so long ago now, they had to shave some of the bone away, and just and the first time it didn't really work. So they'd gone in and done what they thought needed to be done. And then after sort of like 6 months of recovery, she was still having the issues with her ankle, so they had to go back in and do another surgery, which took her out for pretty much. I think it took her out for pretty much 18 months in total. So going from being like Olympic silver medalist to not being able to jump on your feet. So we adapted training, and she did everything off her stomach and back. So she was basically trampolining on her stomach and her back and in seat position for about a year.
And then was she doing rehab in the gym as well? What was she doing?
Yeah. The physio team were amazing from British Gymnastics, and then our own physios here in Sheffield, and then the sort of strength and conditioning people. So like Adela from the English Institute of Sport, she was phenomenal during that time. And one of the other key things was for Bryony to still be accessing training so that she didn't feel like she was missing out. And I remember one day she got onto the trampoline and she can't bounce, but she stood on the trampoline. She did all this pen visualization that she was going through, like the mental rehearsal stuff. And then she turned to me and she was like, "What did you think?" And I'm like,
your visualization looked great.
It was really good. It was like, just a little bit height in the middle. So just, be aware of that. I was like, but generally, like, good form, good technique. And she's like, "Oh, that felt good." And then we just did things like that. And it was her quirky personality. And so that helped with her motivation. And I think so many times you have somebody that's injured or had to have surgery or something like that. And they sort of stop going to their training environment, and in many cases, and sometimes people can't for whatever reason. They might be in a sort of like a situation that they can't access training. But for me, with any of the athletes that I've worked with, if they've been injured, I've been very much like, well, you can still come into training because we can find something else for you to do, whether that be your coaching or helping or conditioning or physical prep. There's something that you can do. Just being in that environment, I think will help with like motivation and things. So yeah, I'm a bit different with that. We've got regards to sort of like athletes that get injured, because they can often get forgotten about, and that can be really demotivating for them.
Yeah, there's a local coaching team near to where I am in Liverpool who I follow on Instagram and really rate, called Red On Performance and Plug-in Rehab, and they've got a little campaign going on at the moment on Instagram, and it's something along the lines of, if you're health professional, if you're injured and your health professional coach tells you to completely rest, run, and if you can't run, crawl. And that really tickled me, because I think that is absolutely spot on. That's what you're saying, isn't it? You have to find a way to keep people involved, keep them motivated for not only their physical conditioning, but also for their mental health. Their identity as an athlete is completely challenged when an injury like that arises.
Yeah, because it's a massive part of your life, and I always sort of like say, use it as like if you look at like what you do, like a piece of cake, like if you look at the whole cake, and the whole cake is your entire life, and you look at sport would be a huge slice there, and then suddenly you've got that slice taken away and you're left with this empty void, and it's like, well, actually, you've got to fill that space. And I always relate to cake because I love food, so it's yeah, but it's something. It's important to keep athletes motivated, physically engaged as well as mentally engaged. And I think that's whether you're an athlete or whether you're just a participant. I think if you're injured, probably the worst thing you can do is nothing.
Speaking as a participant, not just a participant, mate. I am so much more than just a participant,
You know what I mean, though. I mean, if you're not like somebody that wants to turn up once a week for an hour, like it's completely different to if somebody's committing to being part of a massive program and everything. So
I'm still a badminton participant, mate. Once a week, I'll get the pass to go and play badminton, and I love it. I'm still into it.
And if you got injured or something, like and that disappears, that's that's going to impact you physically and mentally. So it's like, keep going, or to see what you can do rather than what you can't do.
Yeah, and you become more and more aware of that as you get older, don't you? When I went over to work in Australia, there was a long period where I was waiting for my physio registration and I couldn't practice physio. And you suddenly realize how important your job, and if you're an athlete, that is your job. You know, if you're a coach, that is your job. But when that's taken away from you, suddenly you think, oh my goodness, what am I?
And that I did have a little bit of that moving up here. So I made the decision to step away from coaching. And I spoke to my athletes about it. I'd had this dream of living in rural Scotland. And I have always gone for my dreams, and I'm living that now. But I thought I was ready to step away from coaching. And then I came away, moved in August 2022, I think 2022, yeah. And it was really strange, sort of after about 6 months, because I was like, all right, I've really missed coaching now. And I could see some of the athletes that I was still working with who'd gone to join other programs, and they're doing really well. And I felt like I was missing out a little bit, so I just completely shut it off, and thought, right, I'm just gonna, this is the next chapter of my life. And then I started to get asked to do training camps, and workshops and clinics, and I wasn't going to do them. And if I'm being brutally honest, there was a monetary element to that to start off with, because I'm renovating this house, and I was just like, okay, I possibly need a bit of extra income coming in, and everything. So it'd be stupid for me to not do these workshops. And then I did the first workshop, and then I found myself again, and I was like, oh, this is what's missing from my life. Like I just, and that now I just, I've got workshops booked up all year, and I do a lot of stuff for free, and to help people out, support athletes and coaches. People will send me videos and things like that and ask for me to critique and support. And I've had other athletes that have been struggling with mental skills and everything, and I've set up calls with them and their coaches to chat through, from all over the world. And I think that's my purpose now. I'm almost like, I've created this little support network of helping others maybe achieve some of the stuff that I achieved, and that feels good.
We should probably book you in to do a few little mini ones on mini clips on mental skills and some stuff like that, because I think we could probably talk about that for ages and do a whole podcast on mental preparation, mental rehearsal, and all this sort of thing for performance sport, couldn't we? But now, so we need to move on to the kind of the next Olympics then. So Bryony went through all of that. She went through 2 ankle operations, doing visualizations and tummy tumbling and stuff like that. And then what about that final push? Once she got back on her feet, were there any issues with confidence, or how did that long layoff affect her?
So I think because we've been doing a lot of the like multiple twisting skills and things like that from her back and stomach and seat, and it was like, so it kept the spatial awareness going. So there's a lot of sort of pre-skills to like the bigger skills that you can do in preparation for those bigger skills. So we went back to doing those and doing lots of development work. She even came out to Portugal to the European training camp with me, and people were sort of mesmerized by the fact that she was still training on her back and her stomach, and they were like, oh my goodness. And they were like, never thought of doing that. Like, so again, it was a long, it felt like a long time. And then she just started to get back up to where she was sort of at before, and had to compete at the World Championships. She wanted to compete at the World Championships, and her target to stay on the same funding that she was on was to come top 8 at World Championships, which was a real push because she'd not been back that long. And she came 9th by like 0.1 or something like that. So that was okay. She took a bit of a dip in funding, I think, that year, and then she started pushing forward again, and I could see that spark come back. And then COVID. So it was, training was going really well, and I remember we were training sort of like in the March time, and she was at the National Training Centre doing some training there. And I remember getting the phone call basically saying, in the next couple of weeks, this potentially could be an issue, and we could get, locked down. So it's like, right, okay, we need to get in the gym, look at like what equipment we've got in here, take anything you need back home with you, like weights, mini trampettes, all that sort of stuff. So it was almost like preparing for like this 3-week lockdown. So it was like, right, for 3 weeks, this is the training program for 3 weeks.
I can just imagine you dragging a trampoline down West Street down.
Look, honestly,
Get it home. Get the trampolines home.
Yeah, we were looking, and certain people did that. They took like they took trampolines if they had a big enough space. I know for there was one guy that he was lucky enough to live in a home that had a barn, and they moved the trampoline into the barn. Like, I mean, that's down to there. So I wouldn't have been encouraging any of my athletes to do that, but if they've got their access to it, why not? So yeah, we were prepared for this 3 weeks, and then obviously the 3 weeks ended and it just carried on, and we had to keep sort of like the athletes going. We did like as many people did, lots of online coaching and online sessions, and then we were very, very lucky that because we were under the elite athlete guidance from the government, that myself and Bryony signed waivers and all sorts of stuff to say how careful we would be, and we were allowed back in the gym. So I think it was the end of May. So everybody had been locked down at the end of March. We've been in lockdown for 2 months. At this point, I was thinking the world's going to end. Like, you've gone from me being Mr. Sociable. I think my nickname at Hallam was Mr. Hallam, wasn't it? Like I used to be.
Mr. Hallam, because you were everywhere.
It was everywhere. Yeah, it was like COVID. Like, yeah, it was just like, I really sort of felt it, because not only that connection with the athletes that you have on a day-to-day basis, but just the connection with people, and it was completely severed. And I'm doing all of my lectures online, and I hated it, absolutely hated every moment of it. And then we got back in the gym, and it was like, it was just I felt so privileged, but we had to do it basically sort of like on. We didn't put anything on social media because we felt so guilty as well. The fact that we could do this to try and prep for the Olympics, but also there's all these other people and families stuck at home. But one thing as well that we did do extra is that when everybody was able to start mixing again and things like that for a little bit, or in like groups of 6 and everything, we didn't, because we were so sort of conscious of not getting COVID, not spreading it, and pushing for the Olympics. So whilst people were able to meet with family members and everything, I didn't for another couple of months. And so that was difficult and tough, but also it was a perfect training opportunity. So she really pushed. Once we could get back to fitness in the gym, like, it gave us the time to really focus on pushing for Tokyo, and it almost gave us an extra year to prepare for it. And along with sort of myself and then the national coaches at Lilleshall, it was sort of like a really good opportunity to get things right, get things done properly, and push for Tokyo. And then Tokyo is a very different experience. I wasn't able to go out there, so the national coach went out with her, and but the feedback I was getting was like, it was so different because there was no crowds, everybody's wearing face masks. Yeah, and it was a completely different experience, but at the same point she still managed to go and get a bronze medal, and then went on to be world champion later that year. So yeah, in some ways those challenges and those difficulties helped prep her even better. So yeah, it was a journey, and she knew that. I think that was my last Olympics. I'd sort of been involved, like I said, in 4 cycles, and I wanted to do other things with my life, as athletes do. So I was just like, right, I think I'm done. I'll do 1 more year, and then I think I'm done.
Yeah, your bounce had peaked.
Yeah, definitely. I'd done it for so long. Like, I've been doing it for, I've been sort of involved in the sport since I was 10, 11 years old, and I love it and everything. But there's also other things that I want to achieve, and there's other roles that I want to take on and do. And if I was going to still be in the gym 5, 6 days a week, I can't do those other things. And I'm not 100% sure what those other things are yet. I've got a few clues about what I want to do, but there's
Yeah.
certainly some things that I want to do which I can't do if I'm in the gym 5-6 days a week.
Well, Paul, I'm conscious of your time and you've been very generous with it. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. So I think maybe we should reconvene and talk about some of these mental skills and stuff like that at some point in the future if you'd be up for that. But where can people sort of follow you and find your sort of coaching information and stuff like that if they're interested?
So I've got my main thing is Instagram. So it's at Paul Greaves 01. Or you can find sort of my email addresses at the University of Stirling website. So if you type in Paul Greaves at the University of Stirling, you can find my email and contact details if anybody would like to get in touch. And yeah, I don't tend to be as active on social media as what I used to be. I'm more sort of like, communicating via emails and things like that, and people get in touch and I set up calls like this and do little podcasts and stuff. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed. I could talk coaching all day.
Yeah. So final question then. What is the I like to ask this one. What's the sort of the topic and the area of coaching that isn't getting talked about? What's the next big thing? What should we be looking out for in the world of coaching?
I think coaching is evolving, and I think it's something that is ever changing, and it's a landscape which is not recognizable from when I first started, and I think it needs to go that way. I'd like to see more of the professionalized sort of coaching moving forwards, and basically I think people should go through a process of learning and really develop their coaching skills. And this is something which you can do as an undergraduate degree. I don't think you can just go on a coaching qualification and a coaching course and really develop as a coach. I think you really need to sort of like delve a lot deeper. If you're going to be a teacher, you have to get a degree and really learn about sort of like developing your pupils. And I think it's the same with coaching. I think if you're going to be working with people, you really need to understand people to start off with, but really understand what are the skills to coaching. So I think the professionalization of coaching is something that needs to happen here in this country, and that's where I'd like to see maybe my influence a little bit more sort of like with that in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Paul. Really appreciate that. You're our second Merseyside Health podcast guest, and couldn't ask for a better one. So thanks very much.
No problem. I need to stop recording now, and I can't work out how to do that. So you're gonna have to edit this out.
So that's all right. We'll leave it in. It'll be great. So three dots top right, and then it'll give you the option to stop recording.
Stop.